Hello and welcome to 2021. This is the Drawing the Ideal Self podcast, actually for December 2020, but it's being released a little late. Hope that won't affect things too much. What I thought we could do today is have a think about how we might look at things that people want to change and explore things that could be barriers to change for them. It's the time of year where everybody is focused on changing. The media spews out lots and lots of different things. Diets, exercise plans, Couch to 5K always comes up now. Various kinds of change, maybe decluttering, maybe decorating, all those kinds of things. And at this time of year, we have decided as a society, or as a world maybe, that the 1st of January is a time for renewal and review. In lots of ways that doesn't make any sense at all, because why should it be on that date? And to me, I associate that people put into action some plans for their own changes over these next 3 months. I think the research about how things go with making New Year's resolutions isn't very encouraging, and people tend to give them up. If you're interested in reading something about how to build habits, I would say Atomic Habits is quite a good book, and I'll put the link in the show notes. And that book and the things it proposes make absolute sense in terms of PCP. So Tschudi developed a method called the ABC for exploring constructs and looking at why we might prefer actually to stay the same as we are now, rather than to launch into a change. And this is not the same as motivational interviewing, which has a slightly different background, but is probably realistically based on part of PCP. What Tschudi's ABC does is allow you to explore what somebody says they prefer to be in terms of the desired state compared with how things are now, but also to look at the advantages and disadvantages of both sides. And that's really important. And remember that constructs always have two poles. A construct is a whole thing. It's from one pole to the other, and there can be grades along the way. So it's sort of dimensional. And what Tschudi's technique does is allow you to explore the extremes of both the emergent pole and the contrast pole. So I thought the easiest way to do this would be for me to do a couple of examples that are real, that are about myself, and I hope you don't mind that, but it seems like it's something that I can do, and it was helpful to me at the same time. And I have used this technique for myself many, many times. I find it extremely useful. It's particularly good when I've become stuck with a problem and can't see why it's still bugging me and why I'm not doing something about it. So I would highly recommend it as a self-help technique that you can use just to explore stuff for yourself. But obviously you can also use it for working with whoever you work with, whether that's children and young people or adults. The PCP occupational psychologist John Fisher said it was a simple but elegant method. And I agree with that. It seems, on the face of it, extremely simple to use, but actually always turns up something which is about core constructs. There's a nice video about Tschudi's ABC, which is available on the YouTube PCPA education and training site. So what that has is a discussion between Helen Jones and John Fisher about the technique. That may be helpful to have a look at afterwards. Hopefully, in just this audio version, I can still explain to you what it is and how to use it. The technique makes people think a bit harder. So the first bit is just to identify what's the construct that you're going to have a look at. And then you move on to exploring the obvious things about that. So, for instance, if what you wanted to do was start running marathons, you'd have, at the moment, I don't run marathons, so non-marathon runner, moving to marathon runner. So you've got the first step, which is to identify what that construct is and what the preferred state might be. And then you explore the more obvious parts of that. That's a bit easier. So whether it's the emergent pole or the contrast pole, I find this really helpful to keep it in the same place on a table, so I always know what I'm doing from case to case. So the simplest way to use this is to draw a table that has 3 rows and 3 columns. Row A, which is whatever your construct is, and row B is going to be the exploring the obvious parts, which are why people are not happy with whatever the situation is that they're in, they're construing of that, and then their preferred option. Row C will be about exploring deeper. So what could be good about staying the same, and what might be the downsides to what seems to be the preferred option? So I'll give you an example. So for me, I think although I go for a walk most days, I play some small amount of tennis, doubles pretty badly, but at least it's moving around. I would say, compared with people I regard to be fit, I'm not very fit. And it would be a really good idea to get more fit, particularly as I'm getting older, and I want to get my heart rate up, and probably really should be doing some strength training. So moving from what I see as unfit to daily exercise which is more purposeful is probably what my construct is there. So the first step is to explore that in a bit more detail. And the way I always do this, so this is the B in the ABC. We've done the A, that's getting the construct down, and now we've got the B. So the reason that I would like to do this is I know it's unhealthy to be unfit. It increases the risk of injury, and I am now 60, so I have to be careful about falling over, etc. So if I can be stronger, it would be a good idea. I really don't like the idea of being unfit, actually. It's pretty inconvenient, and I have to think about what I can do and what I can't do. And I used to play quite a lot of sport. So at various points I've played a lot of hockey, like 3 times a week, and badminton and various other things. Rounders extremely badly. I don't know if any of you play rounders. It's the hardest game. Can barely hit the ball because it goes so fast. So I've had times where I've been more fit, for sure. Admittedly, I was a whole lot younger then, and I didn't have any problems with my knees. However, being unfit I dislike because it's inconvenient, and I actually have to give it some thought. I have to think about what I can do and what I can't do. And I really don't want to be an unfit person. That's not a desirable state for me. It's not a way I like to describe myself. But at the moment, I think I'm certainly not as fit as I want to be. So I've got those 3 things. So it's unhealthy, I don't like being unfit, and I don't want to be an unfit person. So now looking at the preferred pole, and my preferred pole is being fit, which means exercising daily, getting my heart rate up and doing some strength training. And if I could do that, the reason that I'd want to do it is that it means I can do more. I'd be able to go further, I'd be able to do things more easily. I'd be less likely as well to be injured. So I'd be less likely to fall over because my core strength would be better. So to be generally good for my body. It's also a pretty good time of year to change my habits because there'll be lots of other people doing that at the moment. And I'll be surrounded by talk of getting fitter. That, of course, is if I could ever go out of my house. I live in Leicestershire and we're on Tier 4 lockdown in the UK, which means really we shouldn't be going out apart from daily exercise, or if you have to go to the supermarket, which is really no fun. So, anyway, thinking about that perhaps will suit me better at the moment because I can focus on it. So the next line in the A, B and C is the C. And the C is about finding why it is meaningful to stay the same, or what the barriers might be to change. So when I was looking at this, I was thinking, okay, well, if I stay as somebody who I regard as unfit, I don't have to fit in the fitness training and miss something because that's my time when I have to do that. I don't have to think about it at all. I don't increase my risk of falling and breaking a bone by not doing more. And at the last lockdown, I did the Joe Wicks fitness thing enthusiastically, and I'm pretty sure a bit of my kneecap went kaput because I've got arthritis in my knees, and that was really annoying. So I was doing something that was good for me in theory, but probably wasn't the right thing to be doing for arthritic knees. Anyway, so it's made me slightly more cautious about those kind of things. I've been in the past to body combat or various other exercise classes and really enjoyed them. And overall, I know it would help my fitness and also help to reduce the strain on my joints. Okay, so the other thing is that if I'm going to stay as an unfit person, I really don't need to do it when I don't feel like it. I do want to enjoy the exercise rather than have to do it. And certainly, I do think maybe there's something that's more enjoyable about something you don't have to do than something that I have to do. So choice matters there. I think there's something about enjoying it more if I don't have to do it and I do it than if I make some kind of a schedule and then it's part of what I need to do. And then lastly, I don't feel as bad about not doing it. If it's not in my plan and I don't take any exercise, I'm not going to feel as bad about that because I won't be thinking, oh well, I've missed something that I should have done. If I didn't intend to do it and put it somewhere either in my head or on a piece of paper, then not doing it matters a whole lot less, and I don't have to factor it into my plans. So you can see already when I was doing this that I was thinking, okay, there's some definite things going on there, and I'll think about what experiments I might be able to do in a minute. So the next bit of the C row is to have a look at what could be the downsides of the preferred state, and my preferred state is being fitter. And when I was doing this, the first thing that came into my head was that I don't like being cold. I don't like walking the dog in the daylight today when it's rainy and cold, and sometimes I get a migraine when I come in, and I think that's connected with it. But generally speaking, I just don't like getting cold because I find it hard to warm up afterwards. I really want to jump straight into being fit, not having to work towards fitness, because having to work on something makes it a job of some kind, and that's a bit boring. I also don't really like the gym or individual sports. They're not sociable enough or friendly enough. I don't like individual tennis because I'm no good at tennis, so it's not really much fun for the other person, and then I feel guilty that I'm not playing very well. I don't really like individual gym activities because in themselves they are pretty boring. So when I did more sports, it was always some kind of social group thing. Not that you have time to be particularly sociable on a hockey pitch when you're playing the game, but there were other people there, and I think some of that is probably about responsibility for losing, so it's not all mine, and I'm not bothered about winning particularly, so being in a team means that other people really want to win, and then I can try harder because of them. So going to the gym for myself is really not floating my boat, and neither would, say, marathon running be, for the same reason that I don't mind. That's the problem. I also don't want to have to do it, whatever the fitness is, in order to maintain fitness. I don't really want it to be part of my routine because I'm not sure where I'm going to put it. So you can see, if you think about what I've been saying, there's something that's quite important about scheduling and routine. There's something that's important about the kind of exercise and how it might work and what it might be like to do it, that matters to me. And then there's something about a recognition in there that actually, even though I don't really want to do some of the things that are on offer, I probably need to do them. Kind of disappointing, but that's probably true. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, okay, so what will I do? So one thing would be to connect it properly to be part of my routine. Not likely to work first thing in the morning, not likely to work after dinner, so those 2 times a day are out. Might work at the end of a working day before cooking dinner. That kind of time is usually quite good, although that's when I would normally walk the dog, so I'd have to move the dog walk to be a different time of day. But that might be possible. And then to think about what I would do, probably the best bet is something on YouTube. So there is something to watch and there's somebody telling me what to do, and I don't need to remember. One of the issues, I think, is that I don't want to have to remember a list of exercises. That's one of the problems with the gym, that you have to remember what you've done, you have to know what you're supposed to be working on, and in lots of ways I can't be bothered. I know that's pretty lazy, but it's probably true. So hopefully you can see that if you were working with me on this, you would have now found more about what it is that's holding me back and what it is that I want, and you could probably gently suggest some things that I might try. I can always reject those things. The other thing would be to extend what I'm already doing. So rather than to do something completely different, I might just walk the dog further. Or one of the things that helps with that is listening to podcasts, but I run out during the week. So probably download the audiobooks that I haven't downloaded yet and listen to those as I'm walking, which will make it more than the walk. Okay, I thought I'd do another example. These are clearly to benefit myself. This one is not because I have a big problem with it, but because it's probably a good idea. Same as the exercise, really. So I was thinking about, over the holidays, it's been nice to have more than one glass of wine every day, pretty much. Not loads, I'm not a heavy drinker, but it's not a good idea to drink every day from a health point of view. It's also not a good idea to drink more than one glass every day. And that's a sort of holiday activity rather than anything else. However, I was thinking, okay, it's time that stopped after today, which is New Year's Day, last day. But I thought it'd be useful to use the ABC to look at what that was. So first of all, exploring the obvious bit, and that's the drinking wine every day. One glass can easily lead to two if you're not careful, or maybe even 2.5 if someone else drinking with me is very enthusiastic, or we've got a particularly nice bottle, or the dinner goes on longer. And I don't want to have a drinking habit. I don't think I've got a drinking habit of a big one, but I don't want to have one. And it really isn't healthy to drink every day. So my alternative that I'd prefer would be to drink occasionally. So that's what I've looked at here, and that would be better for my health. It still allows for a celebratory drink, and then that drink can be more of a treat. The upside of drinking a nice glass of wine and more every day is that actually it tastes nice. It's a pleasant drink, it's not heavy, it's enjoyable. You can have different kinds, although I tend to have red, and I like to have a glass of wine when I'm cooking the dinner. And I was thinking hard about why that is. Cooking the dinner, when you're cooking it over and over and over again, particularly in lockdown when you don't have many options, becomes fairly tedious to me. making the choice about what to eat is a bit of a drag at times, and trying to please everybody and make sure we've got things that everybody likes is a bit of a hassle. However, having a glass of wine while I do that and listening to the radio makes it less of a chore. So there's something about that, and my usual routine is to have a glass of wine whilst I'm cooking. And I may or may not have another glass of wine after the cooking. If I stay like this, so I just have one if I want one, I don't have to decide whether or not it's a good idea. I don't have to even think of that, pay any attention to it. I can just do it or not do it, how I feel. I don't want to have to think about my health, really. It's a bit of a hassle, and I don't like it, and it's quite boring, but it's a good idea. That's the problem. So looking at what could be the downside of my preferred version, which is to drink occasionally, is then I would have to make a decision about whether or not to have a glass of wine. Whether or not to have another glass of wine when I've had one, and nothing to do with the situation. So I'd be having to think about my health at a time when I could otherwise just be thinking about what we're doing and enjoying that moment. If I don't have a glass of wine when I'm making the dinner, I'm going to miss out on that pleasant cooking experience, because some of cooking is really quite tedious when you're not cooking the most exciting food, or labour intensive, and it makes it a nice period of the day. I guess I find it easier to have the drinking time fixed to being before a meal rather than with the meal, because then I can not put my glass on the table. So keeping my routine of having one glass each day at a certain point in my day means actually that I've got slightly more control over it. And that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before. So if I think about this and the experiments I might do, then maybe what I need to do is have as many glasses as I want, because I would never have more than 3. So that could be either a Friday or a Saturday evening, and often I would only have 1.5. So I could fix it in time, and that's what I've done before successfully. I could find a new drink that can go with the cooking routine. So maybe that's something like a Diet Coke or something, or a green tea, so that I'm not having to change everything at once. So I've still got the habit of I'm having a drink whilst I'm doing the cooking. It's just not the same drink. And see if that makes a difference. I could also find something nice to do whilst I'm making dinner. So maybe listening to an audiobook, saving my podcasts from the dog walk, instead of listening to them then and listening to them while cooking. So I can see that there are options. Listening to all of those things, both problems, just myself listening to myself think about those, I know that I have a problem paying attention to things that are not inherently interesting. And I can see that in all of this. I don't like thinking about things that I don't want to think about, and I find that quite effortful. I also don't like having to remember what I've been doing. So I don't like looking at lists, either for the past or the future, very much. I know I have to do that at times, but I prefer not to do it. And if I have to have either a schedule that I consult or a list of exercises to do, I know that that puts me off somewhat, because I have to find the list, and then I have to have the list given to me somehow or another on my phone or whatever. Probably going for something like a YouTube thing actually would be very helpful with that, because they hold the list, so I don't need to worry about it. There's also something about intrusion on my time, that I think of these things as a bit of a chore, things that have to be done but are a good idea to do, and somehow I'm concerned about them taking time from things that I was going to do otherwise. That is really quite silly when I think about it, because what would I have been doing instead of 10 minutes exercise? I probably would have done putting the towels away in the airing cupboard, which is really less interesting than doing 10 minutes exercise. So I can see, as my own psychologist, it might be a good idea to make a schedule, to find a YouTube video, to not worry about ticking things off or anything like that. And although I can see that some of this is saying I don't like to have a routine, I do have a routine. I have a routine of a glass of wine whilst I'm cooking the dinner. So it's a load of rubbish to say I don't like routines, and I can see that that's just silly. So I think going through this process has helped me to think, okay, look at it properly and try and work out what I can do. And immediately I've finished, or even during the process, I can start to think of possible experiments I can do. It's important when you're using this with somebody else to think about experiments for them to move towards whatever the preferred state is, and to couch them as experiments. So they're not going to make a permanent change, they're going to have a go and an experience with changing. They're not going to be changed and not able to go back. And I think that's pretty important, because if we try and push people along so that they change against their best wishes, we're likely to be unsuccessful. I think of it as sort of gentle nudging and presenting possibilities rather than saying to people, well, you could do this, let me help you work it out. It will be a lot of discussion about, let's have a look at the options. And if you are working with me on these things, you might want to take any part of it and look in much more detail. Maybe do some laddering and have a look at why that matters so much. Maybe have a look at other techniques and see what you can draw out. Maybe have a look, if you've already done a drawing the ideal self with me, at how that fits together with this. So all of those techniques would be useful, but this one is particularly good, I think, for this time of year, and is very useful to do on yourself. So I'm hoping you might go away and have a go. The Atomic Habits book could be useful to you. It's by a guy called James Clear. Really, what the book is about is choosing to change habits by attaching them to other habits. So one of the things he talks about is if you want to go to the gym every day, think about when's the best time for you to go. Have your kit in the car so it's easy to do. Build it into your routine. So you put your kit in the car in the morning, on the way home you call at the gym on the way home. So you're still going home, you're not changing that habit, but before you go home you're going to the gym. I think that can be very helpful to read, not because that's going to be the solution for everything, but just to think about how small changes can be that actually lead to bigger changes. So for me, just changing my routine of how I might, if I didn't do the cooking actually, maybe I need to suggest that. If I could get other people doing the cooking, that would be a solution to all of this, because while they were doing the cooking, I could be doing my exercise class online, maybe. That would be definitely an advantage to me. Probably not going to happen though. Anyway, the reason I like the Atomic Habits book is it's about the smallest of changes, and what you can do is help people to think about the smallest of changes, because the small changes lead to larger changes. In PCP terms, what you'd be thinking about is how come the smaller changes are okay to make? Well, that's because you're not asking people to change all of their construing of whatever it is at once. So they might want to start going to the gym, but if going to the gym means they have to come home from work, get changed, then leave for the gym, you're putting lots of things in the way of going to the gym. So putting the kit in the car makes absolute sense. So what you're trying to do is help people to experience anxiety, and as little anxiety as possible in relation to changes they might make. So anxiety in PCP terms is not having the constructs that you need for the situation. However, it's not as devastating as fear or threat. So fear is when there's much more important constructs or much bigger constructs at stake. Anxiety is small things. So the more peripheral constructs, as they're called, which matter less if you change them. So if you have, for instance, Diet Coke rather than Coke Zero, to some people like me, makes very little difference. Makes a little difference, but very little difference actually. I can tolerate both of those things. They're not that nice, but they're okay. I think, for things like that, it's very helpful to see that my construing isn't about the big things in life. And if we want people to change and we want to help them change and they've asked us to, it's not enough for them to say to us, you change me, nor for us to say, I am going to change you. It needs to be that they are wanting to change and we're helping them find ways that they might experiment with that. That's our role. And I think if you can do that, going for the smallest things is helpful. And sometimes if there's a whole load of changes that people want to make, just the tiny things first would be a good idea, much less threatening, and get them into the habit of changing. Because changing in itself can be quite a big deal. Okay, so what I'm going to put in the show notes is a blank ABC and the examples that I've talked about, which is slightly exposing, but there you go. It's better than exposing other people's construing, probably. At least I've chosen to do it. And I would encourage you to have a go with this. So have a go with yourself and look at something that you fancy changing, and then have a go with somebody that you work with. I'll put a link to the Atomic Habits book as well, in case you want to have a look at that, and to the interview with John Fisher talking about ABC. And hopefully that's something that you'll be able to use for yourself and for your work. And it's pretty easy to learn as long as you know what you're doing, and remembering that all constructs will have two poles. If you don't do that part right, none of it will work. Okay, so that's done for this month. Have a good January. As I said at the start, we are locked down in Leicester at the moment and most of the UK. It's pretty grim. I'm not sure if it's worse to be locked down now when it's cold outside. Probably better for me. I'd like to be out in the summer, so I'm keeping to the rules. So hopefully by the time I'm doing this again, we'll be moved a little on that situation. Let's hope so. Okay, hope everything is good with you. And remember, if there's information that you want to share with me, or you have a go with something and it's pretty difficult for you or whatever, send me a message by email at drawingtheidealself@icloud.com, and I'll get back to you. And if there's particular things you want to see in this podcast, let me know. If you don't let me know, I'll just carry on my own sweet way. If there's stuff that you really want and you think, okay, that'd be really useful, even if I can't do it, I might be able to find someone to interview who could talk about it. Okay, thanks very much indeed for listening, and I'll see you next month.